Hello, I'm Crystin Cox. I'm the Director of Live Game Operations for Xbox Game Studios Publishing. And I'm here today for a little roundtable discussion with two of our GameStack ambassadors. Can I have each of you guys start by introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about your experience in the game industry?
I'm Lanalux, and I'm an independent game developer. I've been working solo on games in the last full-time for the last 4 years now. And I come with a background of web development and then a focus in user experience. But lately I've been working in Unity. I've been creating assets using C#. And I'm currently working on a survival game, first person, single player, with a narrative element. And it takes place in an apocalyptic city. And you have to go around and survive within that. And I also do daily streams while I've been working on that. And I stream on Twitch. And I basically share the progress of the game, what I'm working on, answer any questions where I can, and hang out and chat with the people hanging out with me.
Welcome, Lana. How about you, Mandy?
I'm Mandy Lowry. I co-founded a game company my husband and I started back in 2009 called Hive Media. I'm a self-taught software engineer. Started basically trying to figure out iOS back in the early days and have grown from Objective-C to C#, C++, kind of touched on a lot of different languages now. We just released our Xbox game, Alpha Link, in September, and it's a multiplayer arena shooter.
Wow, exciting. That's really cool. So yeah, both of you are independent game developers, and you just have been working in the industry for, I think 10 years for you, Mandy, like 4 years for you, Lana. And both of you, I think, came from other backgrounds, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Can you guys talk a little bit more about that transition and like what sort of drew you to the games industry, even from other fields?
So I originally started a career in finance when I was pretty young. 18, I started working at a credit union. My plan was to, climb up that corporate ladder and maybe one day become president there. And about 8 years into that career, I really decided how much I hated my job, hated the daily grind, 9 to 5. I was a loan manager at the time, putting people in debt for a living. It was incredibly unfulfilling. My husband at the time was working in the game industry for a local Austin studio. And he was like, hey, we could make games together. Why don't you learn how to program? I got the art down. Like, let's do this. And so we went out and bought a Mac and I started tinkering away with it. And here I am. I left that industry a long time ago and I have not looked back.
Nice. Now I love the just learn to program.
Yeah, no big deal.
How about you, Lana?
That's so interesting, Mandy. I also actually was working in finance before I switched into game development. I actually I studied physics. So I went into science first. And then after university, I went into web development. I started with doing graphic design. Then I went to front end and then some back end. And eventually I was doing user experience for a while for different major banks. And it was interesting because there was a lot of challenges in trying to make banking user-friendly, trying to make it a kind of positive experience, quick and easy. After my day at work, I would come home and I'm like learning to code and learning to program and doing creative things. And it came to a point where I was so interested in game development that I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break from user experience. And there's so many things I want to learn. Like, it's going to take so much time. And it's too hard to do both things at the same time. So I'm going to give myself a little while, learn how to use Unity, learn how to do 3D stuff instead of 2D games, and really dedicate this break towards learning the skills I want to have. And I started doing that 4 years ago, and I never went back. I've been doing it since, and I've been loving it since.
That's great. I'm curious for both of you, what sort of drew you to the games industry? And I mean, I think maybe it sounds like there was a little bit of a connection for you, Mandy, with your husband, but like, what did you know about the industry before you started sort of working as an independent developer?
Me personally, I I didn't know a whole lot. I've been a gamer since I was a kid. So I knew I loved that. Love playing games. I knew that my husband worked at a company, and it was basically a bunch of guys hanging out making games all day, and I had no idea all the different talents that it takes to make a single game. So I was very naive. I was like, oh, it's just art and code. And then it's like, oh, well, once you start, getting into the industry, you're like, oh, well, here's a producer, and here's a QA team, and here's, you have an animation team and a sound design team and engineers. And so I was pretty naive. I knew very little at the time. My focus was just, let me figure out how to program, and I'll figure out the rest later. And I was very fresh.
How about you, Lana?
I kind of was interested in development since I was pretty young. My parents got a computer and nobody really used it very much, but I found it so interesting and I just wanted to do everything I could with it. I started learning JavaScript, even though there weren't really resources online. I did so much trial and error. So it's amazing I got anything to work at that point from just like viewing source of websites. I started making like Mad Libs games and that kind of things, sending them to my friends. And it was so fun to make something and then let people try it and play with it and like laugh about it or have like a experience and enjoy it. And so I ended up doing that for like throughout my other careers. I always had like a hobby side where I was learning Flash, and I made stuff in Flash and put that out, and it was kind of successful. Like it kept encouraging me to want to continue doing it. And I never really thought about going into game development as a career up until recently. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know what that would look like, to be honest. A lot of the games I grew up on when I was little were made in Japan, and I was like, oh, I'd have to move to Japan and learn Japanese. Like, I don't know how games are made, except for like independent games or like Flash games and those kinds of things. So that felt way more attainable than working at a studio. Mm-hmm. And the more I did it as like a hobby and independently, the more I kind of liked that approach to it, because you could be so creative. You can just come up with an idea and then make all of it. It's not like you have to go through this long process and you have to specialize. I kind of was drawn to the more creative and flexible side of the independent development.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It is true. Like having that kind of freedom to express yourself, and experiment is definitely harder when you run a team of 400 people.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you sort of stepped into the industry, were there women in the industry that inspired you? Did you look out into the industry and see other women who were already working in this field or in adjacent fields that were inspirational to you?
To be honest, not many. And I think that's a big part of why it took so long for me to realize that this was something that I could do and even could like saw myself doing at all. Mm-hmm. It took a lot of kind of soul searching. I tried a lot of different things. I had to really think about what was important to me and what I enjoyed doing, what I thought, what I was good at, what I thought would be a career that I'm really, how do I put it? I got to put all of my skills to use and I'm really passionate about. There was actually one woman in gaming that really stands out though. And I don't know her name actually, but it was from the company called Tale of Tales, and it was a husband and wife duo. So Mandy, I really appreciate that you guys are a husband and wife duo. That's really cool. And she was a programmer, and I was like, it breaks all these stereotypes that the husband's doing the art and the woman's doing the wife's doing the programming. Mm-hmm. And they made these really creative games that really stood out to me, especially as independent creators. And so that was definitely inspiring, and it was really cool to see. So
that's great. How about you, Mandy?
Yeah, first getting into the industry, it was very much a boys' club. Every company I worked for, every contract I did, it was I was the only woman in the company, likely, or the only woman in the programmer pit, and so that was a little intimidating, and it was a little. Not soul crushing, but like it wasn't very inspiring. Like, mm-hmm. What am I here doing with, all these guys? But I there were a few things that kind of inspired me, Girls Make Games and Girls Who Code and such. And so I took to Instagram and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start searching out every woman programmer out there and just following them. And then that kind of spiraled into every day for like, I don't even know how long, at 4:04 every day I would post up an Instagram post of another woman programmer I found on my feed, and error 4:04, female coder not found. And I was seeking it out because I was like, I want to be inspired. I want to find other women in the industry that I can connect with, because I think we do better when we have a community that we can relate to, And so then I started a blog on my site where I was like, you know what, I'm going to start interviewing these women. Why not? And putting their stories out there. And so I did that, and it kind of spiraled from there. But yeah, there's been a lot of inspiration, hearing all those women's stories, going to these meetups of other women in the industry. It's always been other women in programming, but it's been very rare to find other women in game programming.
Right.
So I'm still looking for that community, which I think is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about, being a Game Stack ambassador, is because I want to see that grow in the game community. So yeah, some of my huge inspirations though have been the two obvious: Bonnie Ross, with her work on Halo, and Kiki Wolfkill. That name's been around for a long time too. And, it's always been really inspiring to see these women, heading to the top of the game industry, which you don't usually see. That's kind of been like where I'm aiming, where I can at least see a goal up at the top. Whereas before it was like, oh, these are some other cool, head honchos. They're all men, but that's cool. They did it. It's more inspiring when it's someone you can relate to.
Yeah, definitely. Bonnie's amazing. And I will say it's something that's really nice about working for Xbox, where we have so many female heads of studios. It's just, there's a lot of amazing woman leadership in Xbox, and that's been really fantastic. But definitely true. Like, it's even now there's gender equality in game studios is gaining a lot of ground. But you're right that in programming it's been slower. Also, the discipline I come from, which is design, also very slow for game design. It's a little bit faster in some of the other areas, but it is really really great to see more solo or small team women independent developers as well, who really like embody that spirit of a lot of the history of game development, which is really small teams wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of different things, and putting a lot of themselves into their work. So that's really awesome. And like, sort of jumping off of that, when you guys think about the way you came into the industry, both of you sort of mention looking around, there isn't a lot of other women that you see in that space, to emulate or like to sort of create that path. What kind of legacy do you hope you will leave to the next generation of women developers? We can start with Lana.
Oh, that's a loaded question. What kind of legacy do I want to leave? Well, I think the coolest thing about opening up game development to new people who haven't really been a part of it since it started, basically, or very small amounts, is that we can have new types of games being made because we have people coming from a different upbringing, a different perspective, and they're coming to the table with all these new ideas and ways to make games. I think that there's so many types of games, and there's so much potential for the gaming industry in general, that putting new people into these seats means we can start seeing them. And I would love to be creating games that we haven't seen before. Whenever I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if there was a game like that, and then I go look for it and it's not there, I'm like, how does this not exist? Yeah, like that's the next one. That's the next one. I have so many ideas that I want to put out there. So I think not only to make different types of games, but I feel like games is a limiting description. Like digital interactive experiences we summarize them as games, but there is so much that we can do with this that we've barely scratched the surface. So I can't wait to explore and make things and keep making new things and pushing the boundaries of what we think games and digital experiences are and can be.
How about you, Mandy?
Yeah, that is a big question, isn't it?
It's just light conversation. What do you want your legacy to be?
I guess I'd like to echo kind of what Lana said. Having a more diverse pool of game developers would definitely make for more diverse games that people of all backgrounds and such can really relate to and be involved with. And, being out here and trying to be, part of this ambassador program and showing other women out there like, hey, this is possible. In our games, we try to make it balanced there. So, gender doesn't actually have to be a thing. Your main character doesn't have to be, your typical male warrior, things like that. I want it to be a little more relatable to anyone, no matter how you identify. I say that for our games, and I say that, for my career field, in software engineering. I just want to be able to have someone, look at the work that we're doing and saying, hey, I can do that too, no matter, how they identify. So yeah, that's where I would like to be, what I would like to leave behind.
Well, okay. One more question for you both. So hopefully kind of a fun one. What is inspiring you right now? Like, what games are you guys playing that are inspiring you and that you think are really interesting out there in the space?
So lately, I've been teaching my son how to play Viva Pinata.
Oh, wow.
It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I played that game for way too long back in the day. And, he's 7 and he's ADHD and he's learning how to read. And, it kind of touches on all those points. It keeps you kind of focused. It keeps you, having to hit the next goal. And, there's some reading involved there. And, the characters are intriguing, and it's about caring for animals and all these things that, with his history, he needed that. And so that's really cool to see that game, can touch on all that. And, grander scheme of things, or, more recent, I should say, my husband and I played a lot of Sea of Thieves, and that game is amazing. And the updates that they push out are amazing. The multiplayer aspect of it is super inspiring. That's one thing that we look at and we're like, okay, yeah, PlayFab can handle Sea of Thieves, then it can handle our tiny little 2D game, and so those are the two games that, are keeping me inspired right now.
Oh, so much love for Rare. That's so wonderful to hear.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, those are both Rare games, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, both Rare
I don't
games.
know.
And Viva Pinata, an Xbox classic.
Yeah, no kidding. And those are such good. Rare is a great studio. They have a really great attention to detail in their games.
Absolutely, and so creative. So what about you, Lana?
Well, I'm making the game I'm making is called Strain, and it's a survival game. So I've been trying out lots of different survival games, seeing what I like in them, what I don't like, so I can get takeaways and make sure I pay attention to that in my own. I recently played Raft and Valheim, both of which were really great, excellent, like balance and progression, a lot of fun. It would be so easy to get into them, but I honestly don't spend a lot of time playing games these days. Elden Ring came out yesterday, and I want to play it, but I also don't want to take time away from the development of my game. So I've been kind of peeking in a little bit with it, trying not to spoil too much, but the creativity in that one just looks incredible, in the way that the environments and atmosphere of the game create such a unique world that you become a part of when you enter the game. Seeing these giant creatures that look like bizarre walking around, and you can maybe go up to them or you avoid them, and I really like those kind of things. But honestly, a lot of my inspiration comes outside of the video game world. Like one thing I've been really impressed with and inspired by is Raised by Wolves, which is a TV show. It's on its second season right now, and it's also so creative. The world building keeps you so curious, and every so often you're like, wow, what's that? Or like, what's going to happen here? Or how does that thing work? And I feel like that sense of wonder and exploration is kind of hard to find once you're an adult. Like, you've kind of seen a lot of things. Like, when you're a kid, you're like, what is this? What's that? I don't know how this works. I don't know how that works. So I really love when games can provide that to adults and renew that sense of interest and exploration through a game or a show or whatever media. I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but two things really stand out to me there. One, yes, the eternal struggle of as soon as you start making games, you don't have very much time to play games anymore. Right. I know for me, I became a real like sampler. Like, I got to try this for like an hour or 2 hours. Okay, good. Move on to something else. But also as you point out, the importance of finding inspiration outside of games, right? We don't want to be so self-referential all the time, right? We have to open ourselves up to look at other sources of inspiration.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys both so much for this conversation today. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you both.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely.
Yeah.